All the sports news you need. Live.
And hello, a very good evening to you, and welcome to this locker room special looking at our favourite subject, VAR. Graham couldn't wait for this programme, actually. He's been up all night preparing for this programme. We are on Independence Live on a Wednesday night. You can comment on the various platforms we're going out to. We're going out to YouTube and we're going out to Facebook as well, and also Twitter. But the new name is X for that one. So we're joined by a panel of experts. So that rules me, Alistair, and Graham out tonight. Then, we are joined by the usual two co-hosts, wonderful co-hosts tonight. It's even a big show. Alistair put his jacket on for the show. I hope he's not going to leave halfway through the show. Hi, Alistair. How are you?
Good evening. I'm fine, thank you, Michael. So I'm looking forward to this.
And also my wonderful co-host, Graham Duffy. How's it going, Graham?
I'm good, mate, but given you called the X, I hope none of my exes are watching this. They won't be, because they won't care, but...
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, like, I don't actually call it X in my house when my partner's in, because she might get a bit worried, and I might get a bit worried as well. But anyway, that's for the show at 10:30 tonight. We are joined by former Grade 1 ref, Des Roates. Welcome to the show, Des.
Thanks very much, Michael, and Alistair and Graham for inviting us on. I know this has been in the pipeline for a while, so good to finally get a chance to meet and have a chat all things Scottish football.
And James is the man behind the podcast that we're going to get into in a wee bit, called Behind the Whistle. Hi, James.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having us on. Good to see everybody.
Yep, of course. We're here until 9:30 tonight, so plenty of time to fall out over VAR as well. So before we kind of like get on to particular topics on VAR, because I know Alistair has did a survey, and I know James has done some work about VAR as well. But when the subject of VAR coming into Scottish football, what was your take on that coming into the Scottish game, Des?
Before it came in, and having watched it trialled in other countries for a number of years, I was hoping that we would do it better, if I'm being perfectly honest. I felt that we were reactive to other countries, particularly England, Spain, Germany, which we're always going to be, because we don't have the finances to put into these kind of things. But to bring it involved after 12 games, it just seemed thrown in there. I know they'd said they've spent time trialing it in different formats, but until you trial in the top league with the top players at the top speed, you're not going to get a true reflection. And I just felt that to bring it in at the end of October, if memory serves me correctly, I felt that we were underprepared, and I felt that personally I would much rather have seen it run in the background, have it operating, but don't have it influencing games at that moment in time, because I also think that if games are refereed on match day 1 at the end of July, start of August, compared to match day 23, then you're not playing the same competition. You're playing under two separate auspices and two separate rules. So I felt that coming into it, my fears were that the guys wouldn't have been prepared enough properly, the education wouldn't have been disseminated correctly, and unfortunately the errors that we've seen did continue. And I think, to put the tin lid on it, when you hear the chief executive of the national governing body saying it's going to be a car crash, I'm sorry, mate. I'm not putting a sub on for my team if I think he's going to be a car crash, and I'm not signing a player for my team if I think he's going to be a car crash. So I think that really did put the set the standard of what we were to expect.
And of course, James, Des is right. That come in in October, away October night. Alistair might know this because Hibs were playing St Johnstone that night. And if memory serves me right, it was okay until 24 hours later. And in fact, Michael Smith goes off the phone to me. He still can't believe it was a penalty, and it snowballed on from then, James. So, what's your take on the whole VAR coming into Scottish football? And I think it's kind of like spoiled it from a kind of like customer's point of view as well.
Completely agree, Michael. When VAR came in, Des is right, and he stole my thunder a wee bit there, because Mr. Maxwell, who's the chief executive of the SFA, said this is going to be a car crash. This is going to take some time for the guys to adjust to it, because the referees that we have at the moment, they never signed up for VAR. VAR wasn't part of the job description. It's something that's come in and completely changed the job that they do.
James, I'd still say there's quite a lot of them still not in their job description.
Fair enough. Fair comment. But then a few weeks ago, an alarming comment was made by Neil Doncaster when he was giving an interview, who's the chief executive of the league body. And he said, I knew it was going to be a disaster, but it's what the clubs wanted. So I have to ask the question as to why mid-season, and why did Mr. Maxwell, who's at the end of the day got the power to say this is not coming in midway through a season, you can wait until the start of the next one, why did they bow down to the clubs and go with what the clubs wanted halfway through a season? That was just extremely weak leadership for me. That just felt as if it was a complete bout of pressure. It was quite clearly the wrong thing to do to bring it in mid-season. As Des has already pointed out, you used to have part of a competition played under one set of rules and a second part of it played under a completely different set. And that goes against every sporting integrity. And I'd expected that someone that's leading an organisation such as a football association would say that can't happen, but that's not what happened. So who pressured who, and why was there such a rush for it? It was clearly the wrong thing to do. It was the wrong thing to do for the referees. It was the wrong thing to do for the sake of sportsmanship and the sport itself. And at the end of the day, we're all football fans and we've all suffered as a result of it.
Before bringing Alaska and Graham in, by the way, because Graham's got a lot to say about this, and Alaska's got a lot to say about as well. We might have to add more time on to the show VAR time as well. But I was saying to Graham and Alaska the past couple of weeks, in fact, the past couple of seasons since VAR's come into football, it's all right, bringing VAR into the game, Des. But you've got to get it right, and also if you're paying good money to watch football week in, week out, well, you're not getting value for money in terms of like when you're in the actual stadium, you don't know what's going on. You're dependent on your pals or whoever to phone you and say, by the way, that they're looking at that foul that happened 5 minutes ago. But we don't know because we're in the football stadium and it's just in checking for VAR. And then when it's over, it says no possible penalty. But we still don't know what they're looking at in the bit of the middle. So I think that's kind of like lost a wee bit.
I think that Michael, I think that sums up not just the Scottish FA. I think it sums up world football in general up until a certain point through this season when Howard Webb started appearing on Sky TV and actually discussing, or BT, whatever the broadcast may have been, and actually discussing and releasing the live audio of what went on. I think the first one may have been the contentious one at Tottenham Hotspur Liverpool, but he addressed it and he actually spoke to the paying public and fans and journalists like the consumers that they are. Unfortunately, we've seen for a number of years that Scottish FA don't do that, and they won't do that. Personally, as a referee or as just as a general working rule, I've got no issue with somebody hearing a conversation that I've had, because if I've got it wrong, I've got it wrong, and you put your hand up, fair enough. But if you get it right and you give a decision, not everybody has to agree with you. That's the first and foremost. But if you can give it a reasoned opinion of why this is the decision you've come to, then I think the general public would be more accepting of it. Now, I'm not sure if you remember, but a number of years ago, the Scottish FA used to have the whistleblower on a Monday morning, put it on their website. And to be honest, it got abused not by the referees, but by the public and by the media, because what then came of it was a referee bashing every week, whether it be Kenny Clark, Stuart DeGaulle, Craig Thompson was coming out. I'm sorry, I made this mistake. I'm sorry, I made this mistake. I can understand that, because you don't have managers come out saying, well, my centre half just made the third error in 3 weeks and he's cost me 9 points or 6 points. They keep that in-house, and I'm sure that's the way that the SFA done it at the time. Personally, I think that the watershed moment that could have happened in Scotland was the Willie Collum issue at Parkhead, when the goal was chopped off. Everybody's assuming it's a foul, but then it turns out 20 minutes later that, oh no, wait there a minute, Seema was offside. Just tell us that at the time, and everybody went, aye, okay. But I just think that the way that the National Association works, we won't have that openness and clarity. I would say they would always be honest, but I don't think we would have the honesty. I don't think we'd have the openness and clarity to say this is what happened. I think it's only happened a couple of times this season where maybe it's been retrospectively looked at. But when we see the statistics come out, we only got 3 wrong, and then we only got however many wrong in the next section. I'm sorry, you're just smoking mirrors here.
Graham?
So, how long have we got? About an hour and a half. So, I think I'm in the minority, because for me, and I've said it before, I don't think VAR's the problem. It's the officials, and it always has been.
Yep.
Now, VAR as technology is absolutely fine if you use it properly. But for me, the officials that are using it don't use it properly. Now, every fan of every club can go through every decision that have gone against the club. We can all do it. For my own club, Hearts, I can pick out 2 in particular that I don't understand and never will. So the one at Fir Park, where Liam Boyce is kicked in the chest, it should have been a penalty. Now, the VAR guy does the right thing. He calls the referee to the monitor, says, I think you've got that wrong. You need to look at that. The referee goes to the monitor, but sticks with his decision it's not a penalty. Now, I didn't understand that at the time, and I still don't. And the one that really annoys me more is the Ross County game at Tynecastle. So, Alan Forrest is round the goalkeeper. He's got an empty net to score into, and he goes down. The referee books him. Now, at the time, I gave him the benefit of the doubt because I thought, right, maybe he's not got the best angle. Maybe he can't see it. Okay, I get that. What I cannot understand and what I cannot accept is the guy on VAR has taken 10 seconds to look at that and say, you've got that right. What then happens is Hearts appeal the yellow card. It goes to the independent review panel who say, yeah, that was wrong. How can you get that wrong? You've got a monitor right there looking at it. You can clearly see it's a penalty and you didn't give it. So for me, it is the officials that are the issue and not VAR. Technology for me is fine. The technology is absolutely fine. For me, the problem, and it always has been, is the officials.
Well, I can't disagree. I have always said since day one, technology works. I'm sitting with a laptop here, not the most technically minded, as you probably gathered. I can get it working. But you could give my 9-year-old son a NASA-led computer. That NASA-led computer works. It'll probably launch missiles into space. It can send people across the world. But see, if you don't know how to use it, or even it's not even you don't know how to use it. If you've not been taught how to use it and been educated how to use it and educated when to use it, when not to use it, how to interpret it, when to make that call, you're never going to get it right. So the fundamentals, again, comes back to the Scottish FA. How are they preparing our guys to use it? Technology works, but it's only as good as the person who's operating at that moment in time. And to get back to Graham's point regarding the Alan Forrest one, as soon as you seen the review, everybody could see it wasn't a dive. Everyone could see. So the referee has made a fundamental error, and that has been overturned thereafter. But Graham, I'm in complete compliance with you. It's the education and the process that these people who are operating it have went through and how they're instructed to use it.
I completely agree with Des on that there. I'm keeping an eye on some comments there, and there's a guy, Paul Donaldson, who's flagged one of the most probably the most contentious decision that we've seen in Scottish football this year, and we pretty much occupied a whole hour on our podcast on this one, because he's quite right. The issue in that one completely wasn't the technology. It wasn't at all. The problem was that technology failed, and the referee and the assistant referee had made a decision on the park, and knowing that Hawkeye was broken, decided to call the referee to look again anyway to offer an opinion. That was a re-refereeing decision. An offside check is factual. So you've got the on-field decision is either goal or no goal because of offside. And if VAR flags it, it's because the technology is telling them beyond a doubt that's offside. If the technology is not working, how can they call a referee to get him to change his on-field decision? And that whole thing's an absolute farce. And the SFA talked himself out of it completely. But that's what the SFA do very well. They use this term called, we got to the right decision. So forget any mistakes that were made. You, the people, we're telling you we got the right decision. And it's placed well within their media. And the media go, oh, they're allowed to do that. And that was the correct decision. Everyone just forget about it now because the SFA have shown that they got to the right decision. And everybody goes, oh, great. Well, I got the right decision. We'll just forget about it and move on until it gets to the next one. And it happens again. And that excuse is running really thin now because they've used it on a few occasions now. They used it at Celtic Park with Seema. Oh, actually, there's the image. It was offside, so it wouldn't have been a penalty anyway. They used it in that Aberdeen Livingston. I've seen the exchange between Aberdeen and the SFA, and it's comical. It's absolutely comical. But Aberdeen, and to their credit, like to do things very privately, and their approach to that was, we move on. But it doesn't make it right. And Paul, thank you for flagging that one because it's still one that really grates on me personally when we covered that.
I'm going to bring in Alaska here because obviously you've got a smile on your face. It's not because Johnson stayed up this season. But I know you've got an issue with that, but also you've done some surveys that we can deep dive into as well.
Yeah, I mean, we can maybe come back to those later on, because I'd actually like to go back to what we talked about earlier on, which was if I can use the word, the shambles that was the introduction of VAR. And as you guys know, I wrote a book on Scottish referees a few years back, and it was just coming out as VAR was being introduced. So I did a lot of work on VAR, and I spoke to a lot of people. And it seemed to me that there are issues in relation to how it was implemented, not just the fact it's part of the season. I don't see Scottish football doing anything to learn, for example, from other sports which were using their version of VAR. So, for example, I spoke to Jim Fleming, who's head of the referees for the SRU, and he said there's hardly any contact between the SFA and the SRU on this kind of thing. And there's the sport, okay, different sport, but same kind of general idea. So there was no attempt also to learn from the way that in rugby, the laws have changed almost constantly to try and catch up. And you've got issues which come back to, I mean, I agree with Graham, technology by and large works quite well, but there was no attempt whatsoever to engage with the customers of the industry, the fans. It was the clubs want it, the SFA wants it, get on with it. So if you go back and look at the really contentious areas, the handball law, that goes back to IFAB. The SFA are one of the 4 permanent members of IFAB, I think maybe 5 permanent members. Why are they not doing something about this? You know, look at what's happening elsewhere in the world. So you've got instances all across the world. And I looked up some stuff before this show, and ESPN, who are a fairly major broadcaster, writing in January this year, the relationship between VAR and the game is broken all over the globe. So it's not just Scotland. So there are clearly issues here. One of which is the relationship with the customers, the fans. The other is to do with the actual laws and the way they're implemented and the way they've got to change all the time to try and keep up with the technology. And then there's another thing which people have talked about, and that's the media. The same ESPN report said if there's one thing the media loves, it's a VAR controversy. And you can hear some of the guys on the radio salivating over this. They absolutely love it because it keeps them in a job. Never mind the fans who are waiting for it, the kind of things we've talked about before. So I think there's a fundamental issue with the way VAR was thought through, rather than saying, look, let's get the technology right so we can get, if the offside law is, if you go back in history, the offside law was to stop a player getting an advantage. The advantage of a millimetre of your toe is neither here nor there. You could see that in the Coventry City goal in the FA Cup semi-final. So they're now talking about changing it yet again. So it's hard enough for referees to keep up, and they know the laws. The fans and the players don't know the laws. So it's almost impossible to keep on top of this thing. And then you impose the technology on it. How on earth are we actually supposed to know what's going on? And the fact is we don't. And Des and James referred to this, you've got the SFA and the media would, I wouldn't say they're in cahoots to that extent, but they've got a vested interest in this. The media would love referees to be able to comment. But anybody who thinks the media would let that go and just say, okay, that's fine, you said you made a mistake, we accept that, they would not. They would be hounding the referees for the next couple of weeks if they did anything else again. And I think that would put even more pressure on referees. We used to say a referee did a good game if you never noticed him. There is no chance of that now. And there's a referee crisis in Scotland. There's not enough referees coming through. All these things are actually having a negative impact on the game. Never mind the critical thing, as far as I'm concerned, and I think most fans are, it sucks the joy out of the game. You pay your 25 quid, 28 quid, 30 quid, whatever it is, you go along to get out of your seat to celebrate a goal. Something which I didn't do very often this season because obviously Saints are a little season. But that's what you go for. And then to have to sit down and think, oh, hang on a second. And then as Graham and Des and everyone else has said, you don't know what's going on.
Okay. Alistair, my personal view on VAR, right? So football's become a big money sport. So errors cost big clubs big money. VAR would have been fine for something, say the Champions League, right, where it's massive prize pots of money. And it's at risk, so you can understand them try to push for this perfection, right? Keep saying this, Alistair. The football's not perfect. What makes football beautiful is it's imperfect. And it used to be that you had a discussion around the referee and decision making as part of an overall conversation with your pals after a game. It was just one part of it. You talk about the goals, beautiful bits of skills, things that you should have got and shouldn't have got, right? But now after a game, the full focus is on Nick Walsh should have done this. Don Robertson should have done that. Talking about the goals and the things that happen in the game are completely secondary. The sport is not talked about as what it was meant to be. And when you think about how would you think that the people who invented the game would feel about what it is now, that what we've made it with this pursuit of perfection, because it will never, ever be perfect, but they still continue to tinker and chase this level of perfection. You'll never have it as long as there's a human element to it. There will always be imperfection. But we've got to the point now where all we've done is ruin the experience even more by chasing it. And it just takes somebody with a bit of guts to go, we've gone too far here. We've gone too far with this. It was us as the people looking after the game, as the custodians of the game. We've lost our way. And what we're actually doing is we're beginning to ruin it. And we need to wind this back here. We need to take a step back here and think, is this the right thing for the sport?
James, Michael, sorry, Michael, on you go.
No, I was just going to jump on what James and Alistair were saying there. And I know that the guys laugh at me when I say this on the show, but that's where I see this point. Now, I'm not condemning go to the pub after the game, but you go to the pub after the game to talk about the game with your mates. Now, you go to the pub to speak about VAR for about a good half an hour. You actually forget that you're at the game of football. So VAR has taken over the conversation in the pub, down the street, talking to your pals on the phone. So, and it's starting to ruin the game. And I feel as though that it might turn away some supporters going to football, because as Alistair's saying, like, it's not cheap to go to the football, especially with the cost of living crisis as well. So do you think it's going to turn like people away eventually from football?
Could I just jump in there, Michael? Because I noticed that Kevin Heller's put a post up there saying, has anybody met anyone? Basically, just saying, people aren't going to the game. Now, I know full well, because I know Kevin, that actually there are people. I mean, he's been going to see Genefield Twist, for example, rather than going to see Saints away. So it is driving people away from the game, which ties in everything we've said. Sorry, you were.
There's two things there I'll get back to. So as Michael said quite rightly, you're going back to the pub and you're talking to your friends about VAR, and you're talking to, can you imagine going into my work on a Monday morning and people know you're an ex-referee? And the amount of text messages I'm getting from players and managers, etc. So yeah, so that's one as an aside, and I'm joking obviously. But what I would say is, since football was invented, the best players in the world now. My favourite player, my hero is Diego Maradona. But you look at Diego Maradona, Lionel Messi, Pele, Franz Beckenbauer, Johan Cruyff. These are the players who got to the top because they made the least mistakes. And that's the exact same for a referee. The guys who get to the top should be the ones who make the least mistakes. Football player is a game of skill and error. A referee is judged by his skill and error. And if you're bringing in a technology to make the referee's skill judgment better, then should the margin of error not get smaller and not then create national talking points? And just as an aside to that, regarding not going to watch senior football, now my local team, St Mirren, I'll go and watch St Mirren. But more often than not, and because of the comment, I'm a Renfrew Juniors fan. There's no VAR at Renfrew Juniors. There might be a bar, but there's no VAR. And we'll go there. James and I went to a game a couple of months ago. And do you know what? What was he scored, James? 4-2? It was
4-2. What a brilliant game of football.
Brilliant game of football. And do you know what? Everybody walked away talking about the 4 goals, talking about the wee number 7 that was playing for shots, actually talking about the game of football. And it was brilliant. It was so refreshing.
Can I just quickly jump in here, right? This might be controversial, and I make no apologies for that, because I don't. But I want to say 3 very quick words, right, before I get on to the main point I'm going to say, right? I want to pick on 3 very quick points. Clear and obvious. That is what VAR was brought in for. But every single week, it feels like every decision is getting scrutinised, and that's not what it's there for. And this is my controversial point, and I might be wrong about this, and if I am, that's fine. But I think officials have got lazy now with VAR, because it feels to me they're not making decisions on the park because do you know what, if I've got it wrong, VAR will sort it out. That's not what it's there for. It was brought in for clear and obvious. If you make a decision on the park and it's wrong, then fine, you've got it wrong. VAR will get in there. Well, it should get in there, and the official in VAR should say, right, I think you need to look at that. That's fine. But it feels to me as a fan watching it, the officials have got lazy with VAR in, and it feels like they're thinking, well, if I've got it wrong, it doesn't matter because the official will get that in VAR. That's not what it's there for. And it feels to me, I've been to a few Hearts games this season, and every fan's been to different games. And for me, sitting with my laddie watching the games now, again, Des and that I mentioned it there. When you go to a football game, I think when VAR came in, I think a lot of folk, and you mentioned it there, Michael, a lot of folk went to the pub and it was basically, well, now VAR's there's nothing to talk about. But every single week, pubs, clubs on this show, all we do is talk about VAR. And it just feels to me, and I keep saying it, that officials have got lazy because VAR's there and they think, well, it doesn't matter if I've got it wrong because VAR will sort it. That's not what it's there for. I keep going back to the 3 words, clear and obvious. And that's not what it's getting used for.
Yeah, Graham, anyone who already watches our podcast, and it started 11 weeks ago, there's 10 episodes of it already, and we review every game, every week. And we've been very critical when referees have done what you said. You know, that does go on. We were critical a few weeks ago with Kevin Clancy for not pointing to a spot. Celtic versus Hearts. He waited for VAR to make the handball call. It was clear as day. He had a clear view of it. We've seen Matthew McDermott, Rangers St Johnstone, twice. He done it. Very clearly penalties. He waited for VAR to call him over. And Steve Conroy says this all the time. And apologies, Steve was supposed to be on tonight and he's had to be called out with work. So, but what he would say at this point is a referee makes a decision. Number one, a referee has to make a decision. He sees something, the best that ever refereed the game, seen something and made a swift, quick decision and they stuck with it. They were the best that ever did it. The Kalinas of this world, etc. They were the best at refereeing because they seen something, knew the knowledge of how they were looking at it and made a judgment call. Doesn't happen enough anymore. Doesn't happen enough at all. Now, that is one of the biggest problems, is that a referee does have a fallback now, like you say, but he should still make a decision. And you do, and we could catalogue the amount of these that we see where a referee sees something unobstructed. Yep. And then there's a goal scored and they go back to the attacking phase and play and ask a referee to look at something he's already seen and made a decision to play on from. That's wrong. That isn't clear and obvious. Clear and obvious is anything that the referee has not got a clear sight of, his sight's obstructed, something that happens behind his back, for example. Half the goals, if you go back and look at them, have been chopped off this season. The referee's looking right at it. They've given them another opportunity to correct the fact that they've seen something and got it wrong by looking at it clearly. That's not clear and obvious. That's re-refereeing. And our use of it in this country has become very good at using it for that. Steve would say that it's become a fancy way of chopping off goals. And I think it's been heightened really badly because there was, up until about a month ago, a very close title race going on. And I think with the pressure of that title race going on, we would rather take the chance not to let a goal stand that potentially had an impact on that race. It was safer for them just to chop it. I think that additional pressure is seen as more the safest thing to do here is just to cut it off. The hope is that they'll learn from this season. We've obviously got a new head of refereeing. I'm sure we'll touch on that later. But they really have to take an approach of looking at what happened this season. Read the room. They have to read the room and see that this discussion that we've had with Hibs fans and Aberdeen fans and Hearts fans and Celtic fans and Rangers fans. Every club fan base has been affected by these decisions or delays. Everybody's suffering from it. There's no club that's outside of that that's not suffered from that experience of it and the use of it. VAR was supposed to be clear and obvious, but it's not been used for that. It has been used to re-referee games. And one of the worst things that we've seen and commented on a few times is you'll have one of the newer category ones on the park, all right? But then you've got a more experienced or one of the older guys sitting in the VAR room, and he's calling over his lesser experienced colleague to give an opinion. That's what he's doing is saying, you've got that wrong, mate. I'm more experienced than you. Come and look again. That's not what it's for either. That's someone flexing their muscle because they feel that their opinion's greater than his newly promoted colleague. That's completely wrong as well. That needs to stop.
That's shocking. Oh, that really is shocking. I mean, the fans watching this, you think, now I know there was a game at McDermott against Dundee where there was a youngish referee and he was sent across to look at the monitor. Now, I happen to know, through knowing a variety of people, that he was incensed by it because he'd made his decision. It was to disallow a goal for Saints at the end of the game, which probably wasn't a goal, to be fair. Although I've spoken to other people who've been, top level officials who would have given it. It's subjective. Anyway, the point being, he went across, looked at it for 10 seconds and stuck with the original decision. He shouldn't have been sent in the first place. But what you're saying, James, is absolutely shocking that these experienced guys are actually re-refereeing games. That's not what this is about.
Alistair, see what you're saying there, and it's entirely correct. These decisions are subjective, okay? So the referee has the subjectivity in the final decision on the field of play. And to refer to what Graham was saying, clear and obvious. Now, a clear and obvious error, for me, could be entirely different to Graham, to Michael, to James, to yourself. Right? I can get that. But I'm sorry. See the wording, clear and obvious. If you think it might be, do not get me involved. If you know it's correct, get me involved. Don't give me because you think something and you think, oh, this may have happened. That's not what it's there for. And the fact it's getting used for somebody's thinking, then that is re-reffing the game. I used to say to my assistants, and Steve won't mind me saying, but we're both of the very same mind. If you're the only person in this stand, this stadium that sees a decision and nobody else sees it, do not tell me. I'm not interested. See, if I'm the only person in the stadium on the middle of that park that doesn't see it, then you need to get me involved because I'm then looking stupid. If it's subjective, it's 50-50. No, I'm not interested. I need you to get me across if it's a 100% clear on obvious error that I have made. And I've seen far too many decisions this year where the clear and obvious has been left out.
Can I just ask a quick question, Des? Right, this might be a daft question, but see when referees go to the monitor when they've been called over. Now, I know I mentioned the Motherwell game earlier against Hearts, but does the referee actually have to change his mind? Can they actually just think, do you know what? I still think I've got that right.
It's up to the referee. Under the laws of the game, the referee is the man, the sole arbiter of that game. And if the referee, it's almost just like the old assistant referee linesman putting a flag up saying, oh, I think there was a foul. The referee does not need to take that advice. doesn't need to take that advice. He can go across, and we've seen it a few times, and we'll go into it. I think the first VAR decision that was overturned this year happened at Ibrox under a certain new head of refereeing, was the first one to overturn it, which it was always going to be thus. But yeah, the referee does not have to take it. If he feels strongly enough within his own mind that he has caught that decision correctly, yeah, decision stands. And that's the way it always should be. Just like what we've referenced in the Livingston Aberdeen game, that was a thought process that should never have overruled the online referee, the on-field linesman and referee.
Alistair mentioned a point earlier, which I think is right as well, when he talked about the handball rule. Now, this is the thing that I find really frustrating, because 1 week you'll get a handball given, the next week, for exactly the Minster, you won't get a handball. Yep. I genuinely don't think anyone, and I include myself in this, knows what the handball rule is. Now, I'm going to go back to a game that doesn't involve myself, my team, but Motherwell Aberdeen at Fir Park. Motherwell got a goal ruled out for a handball that nobody even noticed for Theo Bair. And I'm thinking at that point, why is the official on VAR getting involved there? Nobody saw that. There was no controversy in that at all. Why is the official, and this is what I say about Queen Office, why is the guy on VAR even bringing that up? Because there was no need. Theo Bair knew nothing about that. So why bring it up?
I remember the goal you're talking about, and I would agree. The ball came across, it hit one of the players in round about the penalty area, it dropped to Theo Bair at the back end of the penalty area. Clear strike, nobody's looking for it. Handball, to me, should go back to what it was as the game was set out. It should be deliberate and intentional. That's it. See, if I hit the ball off you from 2 yards away, what is the opportunity of you to get your hand out the road of that? Absolutely none. If the ball bounces up and skids off you, what's the opportunity of you getting your hands out of that? If you put your hands above your face from a free kick, yes, you're making yourself bigger, you're making yourself larger, you're making yourself an obstacle. See, if you're doing that, or you deliberately punch the ball, it has to be deliberate and intentional. There will be that slight chasm where there might occasionally be a room for judgment, which you need to trust the referee on. But the handball rule this year has just been ridiculous. We've seen them for every team. I'll go back to the Celtic one when I think it was at Hearts, wasn't it? It's come off the player jumping for the ball and it's hit him in the back of the arm and he's motion of jumping for the ball. How is he meant to have done that? How are you meant to jump in the first place? You need leverage. So handball rule needs completely rewritten, which it hasn't been, as far as I'm understanding, for this new IFAB laws of the game. Just get rid of it. Is it deliberate? Is it intentional? Have you stopped a promising attack? Have you stopped a penalty? Have you stopped a goal? Those are the criteria that it should be judged upon, not that your hand is in your t-shirt line or whatever. Did you mean to do it? Yes. Have you put your body to it? Yes. Or no. So I think we could simplify that far easier.
This ties in with. Sorry.
I suppose a question to Des as well. Like, me and Alistair were saying about the handball rule. Just make pockets and put your hands in your pockets when you're jumping for the ball. Des, what was so I know Grim touched upon this earlier about it's the guys and I suppose it's operating VAR, but do you think it would help them if the rest goes full time in Scotland, or do you think it will still be the same outcome?
Michael, can I answer this one quickly first, because we've been asked this on a few occasions now. Now, Steve Conroy was at one point the secretary of the Referees Association, which is like a union, but they weren't allowed to call themselves a union. And he had a meeting with a few of his colleagues and Neil Doncaster at the time, and he was told in no uncertain terms there's no money in Scottish football to pay for full-time refereeing. A lot of our referees, like Steve was a GP, Aidan Napier. Is it Aidan Napier? He's a GP as well. You've got headmasters and lawyers. These guys are all on good money for what they do. They don't do refereeing for the money. That's the truth of it. They don't need the money. They're working good jobs. So to take them out of their professions to pay them as full-time referees, and you factor in pensions, and that money then has to come out of a club prize pot. It comes out of TV money, because that's where the money comes from to fund the game. It comes from the clubs. It's clubs that are playing for VAR. So effectively, we will never have full-time referees in this country. And the other point I'd like to make on it, Michael, is the English Bogmall, right? So the league there actually hires the referees and have their own referee association through that private entity, right? They're full-time referees. They make horrific decision-making and errors as well. There's no actual evidence that full-time referees make better decisions or cause less controversy. So you would end up potentially paying all that additional money and taking it away from clubs and still ending up with a farce.
Yeah,
I think.
totally agree.
Sorry, I was going to say, my understanding is that referees in Scotland get 800, 900 quid a game, something like that, which in international terms is actually really poor. And as James has just said, it doesn't make a blind bit of difference in terms of whether they're making a difference or not. And to address, there was a question earlier on in the chat about Scottish referees having to have VAR, so for big games. We all know what's happened in Sweden, and ironically, we have no referees from Scotland going to Euros, but Sweden has a referee going. So it seems to me there's not necessarily a correlation there.
There is not. There is not. It was one of these things that was sold for the reason of having VAR, was that this is the future, and if we want to have our referees at big tournaments, we have to have it. And then you've seen that vote in Sweden where they said, we've seen what a mess this is making of other leagues. We're not interested. But you're right, the referees are still going to major tournaments, so that makes it an absolute farce that was ever an argument or a selling point for having it. And then now we're stuck with it because we've paid for it. The clubs have paid for the technology. It's not going to go away, and we are stuck with it. And one of the main reasons for bringing it in the first place, we didn't need it anyway, because the referees are still not going to go. And it's quite damning on our referees, to be honest, Alistair, that we've not got any going, to be fair.
Can I just ask Des and James, and obviously Michael and Alistair can ask this as well, but it was only a couple of weeks ago that the independent review panel came out with that 26 errors nonsense, which I just found absolutely laughable, if I'm going to be honest. What did you guys make of that when it came out?
What did I make of it? I think I've used the term before, smoke and mirrors. Who's independently auditing an SFA charter? Have they sent that out to another FA to look at it for them? Have they sent that to UEFA and FIFA? I think that's pretty naive to think that was the actual case. I think if you also look at the new incumbent of head of refereeing, in his opening speech or opening press conference, etc., that was released to the media, he actually made reference to improving VAR and how it operates. That actually came out in his opening gambit. So straight away, that's telling you it's not working. And the SFA have allowed that to go out as well. That was the thing that struck me. If you're backing up what VAR is, then don't put that in there and say, oh, by the way, this is great. We got that bit wrong, but this is great. That was how it was justified. But no, don't believe that for a minute. I think we only need to look at trial by sports scene most weeks, and I'm sure we could all come up with a lot more number than that.
Graham, I just want to add on to this there, because he made a good point there. See this SFA VAR review panel, right? It's quite fascinating. You can find the information on the website. It says it's made up of coaches, former managers, ex-players, guided by experts in the laws of the game, right? Who are these experts in the laws of the game? Did it mean ex-referees? Because none of the ones that we've spoken to are any part of it. Who are these experts in the laws of the game who are guiding ex-players and ex-managers? Bearing in mind, we have ex-players and ex-managers on punditry who clearly don't know the laws of the game and come out with the most outlandish things. They're sitting in a review panel giving an opinion on a decision made and telling us whether it's right or wrong. And
James,
then this,
call me cynical or suspicious. Would you not think that the expert review panel of referees that they're talking to might just possibly be the Scottish FA Referee Committee? I'm just taking a guess.
Could be. I mean, that is some former referee sitting on that desk. But
it's all former referees.
Yeah. So basically, what their numbers turned around and said that 1 in 3 VAR calls was wrong. Either reached the wrong decision or was wrong to use it in that instance. 1 in 3, and then they tell us it's a success. That's not a success. And
Can
they
I just
put out
sorry,
saying
sorry,
that VAR increased the accuracy above normal decision making from something like 86% to 88.9. So they claimed that VAR contributed towards an overall figure. What? That's it. But 1 in 3 of them was wrong. The fudge, the figures you can make figures look great. You can make them look absolutely poor. But when they put out and saying we're getting this to nearly 90% accurate, but then to have the new head of the refereeing coming out and saying, I'll fix it. I'm here now. I'll fix it. That's telling us one thing and then saying something completely different. It's either everything's all right and it's the status quo remains, or there is a problem and you're going to fix it. What is it? You can't have it both ways.
Can I just jump in here into something that Des said? It ties in with this actually, James. I mean, Des, you talked about the new head of refereeing coming in and talking about wanting to fix VAR. Now, I know from conversations with another former senior level referee that his view is that VAR should be extended even further. And it was obvious. This is why I go back to the very start of it, and they should have looked at rugby in the way that rugby is just snowballed. That was what's going to happen, because you'll get incidents in games which are not covered by the phase of play which VAR looks at, but which are match changing. And it then, going back to James's earlier point, it becomes a computer game. It's not the game full of errors and entertainment that we're used to. So do you guys have a concern that this is going to expand further into the game?
No, I think that fans are going to. I think that fans' voices are still the strongest thing in football. I'm a strong, firm believer that football is nothing without fans. I think there's enough discontent. I don't think they will ever get rid of VAR, Alistair. But I think that what we'll see is more of a scale back than an increase in its use. The technology is getting better. Whether we will ever be able to afford the right technology to operate it, which is one of the biggest issues, that the minimum cameras that you need to operate VAR is 8. We went for the empty gingered bottle version of VAR. We went for the very lowest format. We went for 8 cameras. They say they're calibrated cameras for operating the Hawkeye element of it. But those 8 cameras could be 8 standard cameras. How many times have you seen them giving you an offside decision, right? And it's looking that way, right, down the park, and then the line's going that way. How are you as a consumer supposed to determine whether that's offside or not? Because you just go by the lines that have drawn along. Why in those instances will we get no camera that's going along the line of the pitch? It's just it's completely bizarre. It's bizarre.
I give you Jota's goal at for Park, and the camera was miles behind the ball. How can you work that one out if it was offside or not? I don't know if you can remember the goal Jota's goal for Park last season. Yeah.
Yep, I absolutely do, because I remember as well, because I don't think they ever gave us the lines at the time. And we spoke earlier on about Livingston Aberdeen, where Hawkeye Field is quite possible, and they admitted that wasn't the first time that it happened, that it had gone offline. That could have been another one that they've taken a guess at. It's just that more was made of the Livingston one because it was so there was so much talk of it at the time, but we don't know how many times the technology is failing, and then they're taking guesses at things. But you look at the Champions League, right, and they've got the semi-assisted automatic technology, right? So that's 12 cameras, I believe, to operate that just for offside. It produces 3D models almost instantaneously, and it's accurate to millionths of the seconds, right? So it can capture a perfect image in offside and give you it in a graphic form. We draw physical lines across a pitch. That's the difference here. But you say 8 cameras, that we operate the whole of VAR with 8 cameras. They're using 12 just for one aspect of a game, right? What does that say about the fact that they need 12 just to deal with offside accurately? We do the whole thing with 8. Now, here we get even more interesting. There's actually a study, and I'll find it and I'll put it back on our X page if people want to read it. I'm sure it's from the University of Bath. There's a professor who specialises in optical technology, and they concluded that the cameras that are currently being used for VAR for offside are not fit for purpose. They can't capture at a fast enough frame rate to accurately produce the image required to tell if it's offside, because you've got motion blur. The ball, they did a test and said people stop it where you would stop this to check for offside, and when they check the accuracy of it, they would be off by a few millionths of a second, and that's enough for someone to be on and off. So they're actually saying that the human element of it can go too early to make the decision, and that the camera frame rates are not fast enough for its intended purpose. So if it's not, why are we using it? Why, if it's not fit for the purpose of its use, why bother using it?
See, to balance that out a little bit, because I'm a Libra, so I'm going to balance the scales a bit. See what I did there? We've always talked about VAR and we've given it a kick in, which I understand, but I did talk about officials earlier. But to prove that I think it can work, and Old Firm fans are going to love this, well, one half of them anyway. If you go back to the Celtic Rangers game a few weeks ago, the John Lundstrom one. Now, again, the referee on the park that day thought it was a yellow card. Fine. I needed one look at that to know it's a red card, unless you're Kenny Miller, who doesn't think it's a red card at all, which just blows my mind. But they got that one right. That's when it works perfectly. Yep. But again, I don't think we've seen that enough this season. There's been too many other games like that you just don't see the correct decision. But that one was right. And then you look at the game on Saturday as well, when you look at the incident with the push on Joe Hart. Now, again, I'm not a Celtic Rangers fan. I couldn't care less. But the fact is, if you put two hands on the goalkeeper, it's a free kick. And again, Ali McCoy is raging. I don't know why. Well, I do actually, because Rangers sport. But that was the right decision. It was a free kick all day long. So VAR, I think the officials do work. But again, I go back to that Lundstrom one. At the time, I needed one look at that to see it's a red card all day long. The referee gets one look in quick time. He didn't see it. He goes to the monitor, see it's a red card. That worked perfectly. But for me, over the course of the season, that's not happened enough. And to go back to a point that you've made earlier on, the fact that it was brought in 12 games into a season is just typical Scottish football. And as Des said, you've got Ian Maxwell coming out and saying this will be a disaster. It's not exactly a great look, is it, when your own chief executive is going, this will be an absolute shocker. But again, the one thing I would say as well, English Premiership have had VAR a lot longer than we have, yet their officials are still getting things so horrendously wrong. And also, and I mentioned this to Michael and Steve when we did the kind of meeting show about this, look at Nottingham Forest statement and who they had employed at their club. Mark Clattenburg, an ex-referee. How was that even possible to have a guy like that at their club? Absolute farce.
I think that says more about Mark Clattenburg and his persona and his self-esteem and self-worth. Because as soon as he made that statement, his position became intolerable. There was no way he could continue in that, and there's no way that any English referee or the FA would ever talk to him again and treat him with anything other than contempt, because I think it was absolutely abhorrent. To go back to the Lundstrom issue, absolutely, Graham, entirely correct. I think most normal people looked at that one and thought, oh, that's a hardy tackle. Looked at it on review. The first thing you look at and go, no, that's a red card. So again, there's a positive to it. It does work. Somebody's called that correct, had the gumption to get the referee across. Willie came across, looked at it. Yep, no problem, turn it around. But that's what we need to see more of. And that'll only come through more use of it, more education of it, more basic interpretation of when to get involved, when not to get involved. And that's taken us a season and a half since it first came in. So if you put a 18-year-old into your first team at Hearts, do you expect him to get a few things wrong at the start of the season? Yes, but you drop him in, drop him out. You don't expose him every single week. See, in a year and a half time, and he's playing in a high-pressure match, do you expect him to make better decisions? Do you expect him to have more competence in what he's doing? That should have been the exact same as it was with VAR. But VAR wasn't ready at that moment in time to be used every week. It had to be given time. The officials had to be given time to use it. As I've said all along, to come in at that moment in time was entirely wrong. The chief executive telling you it's going to be a car crash, you're not going to say that to an 18-year-old. Look, son, I'm going to put you in, but you're going to be absolute honking for about a year or so. You might be all right come next May, but do you know what? I'm just going to keep playing you every week. That's not how it happens. That young person's confidence will go down, just as it has with VAR. The referee's confidence using it, the fans' confidence of the referees using it. I know people said, well, fans get it changed. I don't think fans will get it changed, no. But I think that fans can have an influence because the feeling among Scottish fans now has never been lower in the quality of football and the quality of officialdom that's been going on. They've got to get that trust back, and that'll only happen by better use of it, better interpretation of it, better education of it, and a better experience of it in the ground.
Okay,
The-
can I
the-
get, can
Sorry,
I
Michael.
just ask you? Sorry, Alex. Can I just ask, move it on slightly a wee bit? And me and Graham spoke about this last season. VAR in the Scottish Cup. Now, do you guys kind of like agree with me and Graham that VAR should be used for the semi-final and the final only? Because I don't think it's really fair to use VAR in the earlier rounds or when the big teams come into it, because it gives the big teams maybe a kind of like advantage, if you want to call it like that, and trust they're used to it because they're using it every week now. So
Absolutely.
what's your take on that, Des, about the bringing it in just for the semi-finals and the final and not using it at all in the earlier rounds?
I agree entirely. I think if a ground isn't at the capability to have it and host it, then it shouldn't be used. If you are Ayr United, Peterhead, and you draw against Hearts, Hibs, Celtic, Rangers at your ground, you do not have the option to use it, so it's not used. However, if you draw Celtic, Rangers, any Premier League team, and they have it, they have the option to use it. Now, I think we've seen quite a few times that Kilmarnock never opted to use it because it was going to cost about £30,000 or so to use it that evening. No, it's a cup competition. If the team you play for, the team I play for, the team you support, the team I support, if we start the first round in August, we should have the same parameters to operate within until the semi-final, when both semi-finals go to Hampden, and then all teams are under the scrutiny. And that's the only fair way to do it when you're all playing under the same rules and the same auspices.
I'd like to come back to the fans bit later on, because obviously with my football supporters hat on, that's something that's important, and particularly the point James made about the lack of transparency with the panel. But Graham talked about the cup final, and I'd like to ask James and Des about this, because apart from the fact that it made me quite pleased that the St Johnstone Livingston game in December wasn't the worst game of football I've seen all season, the incident where the goal was chalked off, Graham talked about Hart being pushed, but obviously the reason McCoist was annoyed was because he saw a foul before that, or what he perceived to be a foul. And that's looking at that again, I watched that as it was happening. I watched it being played back. I didn't see that first foul. What were your guys' thought on that? 'Cause that seemed a very controversial incident.
Can I go first? I a split opinion, because when you do see it back, you do see the pushing and pulling. It's a bit of a three-stager for me. Raskin and Taylor are jostling with each other, and jostling at a corner is fine. We see that every corner. See, if players had to be completely separated before a corner's taken, you wouldn't get a game played. There's always going to be contacts happening. It's whether the contacts are full, and we talk about that all the time, that it is a contact sport. It's not basketball. You can touch each other. You can have a push and a shove, as long as it's not unfair and it's not illegal for the referee's interpretation. So you will have some jostling going on. So in that incident there, the first initial point is you've got Raskin on this side, Taylor on this side are jostling. Raskin wants to go beyond, and Taylor follows him. There's nothing for me that's illegal in that first part. The second part is that as Raskin goes and puts his hands on Hart, you've got Taylor then putting his hands around Raskin's midriff, or you can at least see one arm from the goal line side. I don't actually think he does with the other arm, even though that was claimed. But that's still what Taylor did at that point is illegal as well. So you're then looking at the sequence as to when did the ball come into play, right? Because the initial jostling that happened, etc., the ball might not even be coming in yet in play, so nothing can be a foul. So it's then coming down to what happened first. Was Hart pushed first, or did the arm go around Raskin first? And I think when you actually see it in timing, you've got that arm going on to Hart first before Taylor then puts his arm around Raskin. So that's probably why they've looked at it. And what they'll always do with goalkeepers, because goalkeepers do get blocked at corners, tactically, attackers, defenders, anybody that's in the box at a corner, you'll always have one that normally goes, I'm going to block the path out for the goalkeeper coming for the ball. So they get an extra level of protection for that. So when you start to get a situation like that, normally they're going to protect the goalkeeper. It's like we see it every week. It's an old adage and famous saying that they're a protected species. And I think Des even said it earlier in this call. Goalkeepers tend to be a protected species because, they're going to be able to come out and clutch and grab a ball from the air. And that's a huge advantage for a goalkeeper. By having somebody try to block him, you try to take that advantage away and increase your chances of scoring a goal. So I spoke with Steve, I spoke with Des about it, but we don't have a problem with that goal being chopped off for that. Whether the contact's enough to cause a guy heart size to fly across the line the way it did, I think he still jumped and went out to punch the ball, made a backside of it, and just pointed to the contact as a way of getting out a decision. But see, at the end of the day, a referee isn't going to consider that. They're just going to go and look at it. Is there contact? Yes, there is. Force, it's not even going to come into question, Alistair. It's just a case of, has he put his hands on? Yep, well, that's enough. Because he has then gone that way. Whether it's a result of the contact or not, that's the telling point. He's put his hands on, so therefore Nick Walsh was perfectly within his rights to chop the goal off.
There was a question I wanted to get here, actually. Somebody mentioned it earlier. Happy House says rugby gets it right. The refs are mic'd up and the crowd knows what's going on. I've said that for a while. Now, I would prefer if referees were mic'd up and we heard what's happening, because at least then it gives you transparency. You might not like what they're getting said, but at least you can actually think, do you know what? Okay, I can hear what he's saying. I understand why he's done a certain decision. But the fact is kind of all cloak and daggers and nobody knows what's getting said. Nobody knows what's happening. Like, I've been to Tynecastle a few times this season, and all you see on the screen is checking potential handball. You've got no idea what the incident was. At least if you then get what the referee's getting told or what you're hearing, you can maybe understand a little bit of what's going on. And I think the referees in rugby get it right. Why can't they do that in football?
Well, you've obviously listened to our podcast, because I've been, and when we spoke with Alistair earlier, I'm a big favour for that, almost like the American football style. If you put up checking possible handball, all the referee needs to do, it can allay any fears, any concerns in a 1 minute review. If it takes more than a minute, then it's not clear and obvious, and then he just has to hit a button, penalty check, number 5, Hart Midlothian, penalty kick, St Johnstone. That's it. Or no handball, play on. That's it. I would have no issue with that. And that's what we're going back to as well previously, saying about the SFA releasing transcripts or allowing people to hear. That's transparency. There is nothing wrong with transparency. You're going to get it wrong. Sometimes you will. But at least let the punters and the managers and the players go, well, he's given it for this. Or somebody running through the goalkeeper's brought them down the penalty area, but he's not been sent off. Okay, goalkeeper's made a genuine attempt to save the ball. Maybe in the Alan Forrest one, keeper's made a genuine attempt to play the ball, made contact with player's foot, penalty kick, Hearts, yellow card. That's it. It's over and done with, and it takes away any ambiguity that's sitting over it. So I would have no issue with that at all. I would love to see it. Same as basketball, same as rugby, same as American football. These guys have got it right.
See in the English, just quickly touching on that, Des, in the English Premiership, as we all know, they release the audio. Why not do it here?
Because
I'll tell you why, Graham.
Has been.
I'll tell you why, Graham. Right, so like picking up on Des's points there. I mean, what Des is talking about is what they've got in the MLS now, right? There's clips on it. They brought it in the MLS that you get this on-field review, like push the button on the belt. They come through the tannoy saying, having reviewed the footage, there's been a full-on red 5, penalty, blue, right? Give a decision, explanation of the decision. They brought it in the A-League in Australia as well. And it's added theatre back into for what they've taken out of the game, because crowd feel engaged in it again, get and understand it, explain it to a reasonable person. They might not agree with it, but giving them a reason, and a reasonable mind person says, okay, understand why he's done it then, his decision, don't agree with it, but understand why he's coming to that decision. But I go back to an earlier point why I don't think we'll ever have this in Scotland, because the SFA like to control things, okay? They like to control narratives and discussion, and if you broadcast something out and it's a mistake, they can't then make it look like it was correct. That's my honest opinion on it. If they were to have a referee stand out and said, I've looked at this and I've made this decision, and it's later reviewed that the referee's got it horribly wrong, they can't then correct the narrative and put it out to their media print partners to say they actually got to the right decision.
And that's exactly what happened with the whistleblower as well, because there would just be too many occasions of mistakes being explained, because players don't do it, managers don't do it. So it would almost be like putting the referees up as a scapegoat. But yeah, that's it's a control thing.
I don't know if it makes anybody feel any better, but it's not just Scotland, because I discovered through doing some digging prior to this show that in Spain, I don't know if you guys know this, in Spain apparently La Liga publishes the audio 1 hour after the game.
I knew they published it. I didn't realise it was just as quick as that.
Right. However, the interesting thing is there was a game in January this year between Real Madrid and Almeria, which had 3 very controversial goals for Real Madrid, which allowed them to win the game. And it caused a huge fuss across there, a massive problem. What happened after this game was the authorities, possibly with some Scottish people in their influence, I don't know, released the tape, but didn't release all of the tape. Somebody then leaked it to the press, and obviously all hell broke loose. One of the referees who featured, this is the kind of thing which we get because of the tribal nature of Scottish football, particularly with Celtic and Rangers and all the stuff that goes with that. One of the referees was basically accused of favouring Real Madrid, because they've obviously got a similar thing with Real Madrid and Barcelona. That's the kind of issues you've got, as James said, when you've got the authorities trying to control the narrative. And it comes back to this complete lack of transparency, which, as the Scottish Football Supporters Association knows, doesn't just apply to referees, it applies to loads of other stuff. And it's insane, because actually, the point we've all talked about is the fans and the most important people, etc., etc., etc. They don't actually, we are like mushrooms. We do not know what's going on.
Can I just ask the other quick question as an ex-referee, because it just sprang to mind just now. I think, I might be wrong, but I think it was Stuart Kettlewell a couple weeks ago said that he tried to talk to the referee and basically just got batted aside. I mean, when you were refereeing, Des, did you have a laugh and a joke with the players? Because it seems now, and again, I apologise, but it seems now that referees are like robots. They don't have any banter with players. Look at years and years ago, for example, the Paul Gascoigne thing where the referee booked him for giving him his yellow card back, which was ridiculous. But I mean, Stuart Kettlewell and a few managers have said that now. You can't talk to referees. It's like they're not human. I mean, how did you go about refereeing games? Did you have a bit of banter with players and a bit of a laugh with them? But obviously knew where the line was.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that was part of the downfall of Steve and I's why we weren't always seen eye to eye with the SFA. I would gladly talk to players through a game, not a problem at all. And I didn't mind taking a bit back. Obviously, it was within reason. I would have no problem if a player's made a tackle and taken a yellow card. Say, that's a decent tackle game. You're taking one for the team there, but make sure that's your last one, or try and use a bit of a jokiness to kill a situation. I remember a player was going crazy at me over a decision which he didn't think was correct, and it was a foul. That's all it was. But the crowd were baying for him to be cautioned, and I pulled him in, and he's running out and he's going, Des, that's never a foul. That's never. And I went, Cam, what are you shouting at? Like, Saturday night, I'm going up the road for a Chinese, so I want to get out of here as quick as I can. What are you having for your dinner? And he's looking at me. I was like, look, everybody's expecting me to be chatting to you, so I'm going to chat to you. I'm chatting about chicken curry, right? That's me. I'm going up the road. So see you, just turn around. The crowd never spoke to you, and they beat it and look angry. And he's ran away. Do you know, about 5 minutes later, he came up and he just patted me in the backside and went, brilliant. See, after that, every time I refereed that player and a couple of his defenders who were privy to it, never a problem. Never a problem. You've got to have some form of humour. We're all in it because we enjoy football. Exact same with managers. There's been a couple of managers who I've had a few run-ins with who maybe not on my Christmas card list, but I'd like to say I'm pals with a lot of ex-managers and still am. I would have no issue talking to a manager. What I would say is, I'll give you the respect to take 10 minutes, go and get a shower, come back and speak to me. And if we want to have a reasoned conversation, I'll give you a reasoned conversation. And 99 times out of 100, that would happen, and we would shake hands and we would go on with it. I think I can only count in my hand two referees, two managers that maybe didn't have that cordial relationship with it straight after, and it carried on. But hey, football's an emotional game. But yeah, you've got to have that time to talk to people. Regarding the way it is now, obviously not been in it, but I think if you look at the profile of all the referees that are coming through now, they're all very similar. They're all young guys, slim, fit, well looked after, well turned out. You're always playing catch up to your predecessors. So we were always going to play catch up to Kenny Clark, Hugh Dallas, Stuart Dougal, John Rowbotham, etc. These guys are now playing catch up to the referees that were around 10 years ago. But I do think, and honestly, go away and look at it. If you look at the current high profile of our current SPFL Premiership referees, they're all very much cut out the same cloth, and they all look very similar. It's coming off a production line.
I was going to say as well that a couple of wee points before we go on to Alistair's survey, because I was looking at that survey Alistair last night, and it was quite interesting, the stats and all that. But like going back to a point that has been made throughout the show tonight. Do you think the match official loves VAR because it's like they point to the ear, so it's a kind of like pantomime villain, if you know what I mean? That it's like, nope, I'm listening to it, so everybody is focusing on him for 15 minutes as well. So do you think the ref loves the power of VAR and no, listen, it's in my hands, it's up to me what's going to happen here?
I don't know. I think I would prefer to have the power in my own hands. However, as I again mentioned earlier, if I've got something horrifically wrong and I'm the one that's made a massive error and somebody can help me get that error right, I wouldn't want to disadvantage a team because of my errors. Teams should win because of their own play of good football. Shouldn't be losing games because I make a mess of it. Do I think they like it? I don't know. I think it's a 50. It'd be preference. For me, would I be loving VAR? Not the way that it's currently operated. Hopefully, in the next year or two, it might give me a bit more faith in it. But at this moment in time, then under the current application use of it, no, I'm not a fan of it.
I want to pick up on the point. Sorry, Alistair. A comment making the chat about I coach my daughter's football team, and every ref we get, Dags always get up to the level of VAR. See, back to James's point, this ties in. We're never going to get away from VAR now. VAR's here to, whether we like it or not, but I was watching a championship game the other week, and I think it was Ray Roberts, and I won't mention the commentator's name. All I'll say is it's Alistair's favourite person, and I think Alistair might know who I'm talking about. But he says if that was VAR, that was a penalty. So they're actually setting a precedent, James, in terms of like if it's not in the game, well, they'll still refer back to that. So it's a dangerous path that they're going down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know the individual you're talking about. He likes the sound of his own voice, and often when he's challenged on the laws of the game, he doesn't know them. When we spoke about him before, everybody knows who we're talking about. That comment's quite concerning. That comment that St. Kev 76 made there, referees are effectively not wanting to get to Category 1 because they know when they get to Category 1 they're probably going to have VAR forced upon them, and they therefore don't want to referee anymore. How terrible is that? How are you supposed to encourage and promote referees if they actually fear getting to the top level because they were landed with VAR? completely wrong. Now, see, with anything you bring in, right, human perceptions normally, it's your first reaction is what stays with you. It's very difficult in human nature to make someone's opinion change when it goes wrong the first time round. It's quite common. They talk about this a lot in the customer services industry and in the services industry, where your first opinion on something matters because that's what stays with people. That's what they discuss with other people. And if you have a positive experience, you're more likely to tell 10 people about your positive experience. If you have a negative experience, you're more likely to tell 20 people about a negative experience. Now, when you've delivered VAR and it's been a bad experience, right, and everybody's in unison, it's a bad experience and talk about it so much, it's going to be very, very difficult to ever change the narrative that it's not working and it's unsuccessful. You won't change that. For most people, it is what it is, and they're not happy with it, and you'll never change the narrative on it. And that's why I go back to saying what I feel it will get to the point where people will get fed up enough. Fans will lobby their clubs, because see, at the end of the day, it was the clubs that wanted this. As they never consulted fans. I don't know what clubs you guys. I know Graham. Obviously, I know you're a Hearts fan. Did Hearts come to you and say, before we vote on this, what's your opinion? Did that discussion ever happen with any Hearts fans groups? No. I know it didn't happen with other clubs fans groups either. The clubs made the decision without consulting the fans. That's terrible. We're the customers of the clubs. You guys get season tickets and pay a lot of money. And even at that, you're the second-rate customer, because the person at home's getting the VAR decisions told to them. They're getting told by the commentator what's actually going on. You sitting in a football ground that's paid all that money to actually be at the game and travel to the game doesn't know what's going on. How is that? How have they managed to get into that position where they've disadvantaged the punter that goes to the game? It's just crazy. And somebody has to have the guts to tackle this. And we said that has got to come from the head of the organisation, the head of the league body, to understand the frustration of fans and begin treating them like customers to deliver something that they enjoy again, because fans are not enjoying this or suffering it, and will continue to suffer it if they keep the status quo, and they can't have the status quo because it is turning people away from football. And,
James, I think you want to touch on the Stuart Kettlewell point as well.
I didn't want to touch on the Kettlewell point because I do want to actually be fair to referees here. Now, I watched that incident, I spoke about it on the podcast, and football's a gentleman's game. And what I mean by that is that there's certain things that you don't do. There's lines that you don't cross. And one of those is that immediately after a game, you don't come out and make comments about the referee when the decision's not going against you. It's not a good look to actually come out and lambast the referee. There was allegations made Napier, the referee that day, has apparently said things to players, and his attitude towards the players was all wrong. I watched the footage of that incident. I mean, it's a clear red card. People will say it's contentious or whatever. It's not at all. The foot was high. It went into the guy's groin. It's serious foul play and as a red card. Steve agreed. Steve Conroy, red card. Des Roach, red card. Referee on the day, red card. Bobby Madden, who put on his Instagram, red card. Every referee that had a viewpoint on that said that's a red card. What he did post-match, Stuart Kettlewell, was went to the press and made all this stuff about the referee's attitude that day. That was completely wrong to do. See, if you've got a problem with the decision, or even if you did have a problem with his attitude, put it in a letter to the SFA. Don't go in front of a TV camera and make these accusations. He's very lucky and never got hit with a disrepute charge over that, because that's why those charges exist, is to stop that kind of behaviour. It's never a good look when you have had a decision against you and you want to come out and make allegations against a referee. And it's happening too often now as well. And what they don't realise, these managers, when they do that, they're making the referee's life very, very difficult away from the game. We've seen it when Brendan Rodgers was cited for his comments about John Beaton. The guy's life was in the front and the back page of the paper all week. He never signed up for that. All he did was made a decision on the day, whether it was a right decision or a wrong decision. All he did was do his job and made a decision. By managers making these comments in the press after, they literally are making referees' life's hell off the park. They're putting a lot of additional pressure on them. we need to get back to the point where there's certain things and lines that you don't cross. It seems as if it's too easy these days to cross them. And the SFA, in that point of view, should have actually clamped down on these things as well. There should be warnings going. There should be more managers cited when they cross those lines, because the referees need some protection as well from that, because it's really unfair that they have to have their life in the front and back pages because a manager wants to have a go at them.
I can't find it just now, but there was a comment in the chat. I can't find it. I don't know what it is, but somebody said in the chat, like, how do we get rid of VAR as fans? I don't think it's easy as that. I know that there's that vote in Sweden about getting rid of VAR, but I've already mentioned it. For me, VAR's not the problem, and what it needs is better officials. And I said this to Steve last week in the chat before, and I know he mentioned it as well, but I think what it should have, and I know he did say this as well, but I think it needs designated folk that only work VAR, because what I seem to see is 1 minute our official will be on VAR, the next week is refereeing a game. I think it needs designated officials that all they do, their whole job, is just doing VAR so that they get better at it. I don't think, for me, as a fan, it's a case of getting rid of VAR. I think we need to make the officials better at using it.
Yeah, I completely agree that the training needs to be better on VAR, but we have 2 full-time VAR referees, 2 former referees that were taken off the park due to physical condition issues, injuries, and they weren't able to stay on the park as officials, and we at the same time made them full-time VARs, but we don't put them on the big games. What does that tell you? You've got some of the biggest games in the league, and we do not put those 2 particular referees who are dedicated VAR on those games. That's a shambles.
As far as I'm led to believe, there's a third VAR being made specialist this summer with the new gradings coming out. So I know that they are obviously looking to up that, which can only be applauded. But yeah, I think that the current system of only having a couple, I would be happy to maybe see half a dozen if we can afford it. The difficulty is we don't have a plentiful supply of referees in general. So to then therefore take ones out of that and make them specialists of VAR, the only way we could work is if it's someone who is struggling through injury, etc., who's been at a top level category 1 referee, or those who are retiring, which is one that's I believe is happening this year. That's the only way that we can still service the game and make sure that we're looking after all divisions within the SPL. Then you get your Lowland Leagues, then you get your East of Scotland and your West of Scotland. So we don't have a plentiful supply. The difficulty is not getting the referees in to sit the course. It's the retention. Recruitment's okay, but it's retention. I think I'd spoken to Alistair previously. If you get 10 people, young men and females through the door for a course, 12 people, see in a year's time, if you still get 3 of them there, you're doing well.
Yeah, just to let you know that because we're talking about VAR, I've actually checked with wee Willie behind me. We're on to 9:40 tonight, so get your comments coming in as well. I mean, a lot of people don't know this, Des and James, but there's actually 2 refs actually sits in the VAR room. So really, there's actually 6 in the team for the day, like the 2 match officials, the linesmen, the 4th official. And by the way, I've got a question, not about the VAR, but a question about the Scottish Cup semi-finals. I'll come back to in a minute. It kind of gets off the VAR subject a wee bit. And then obviously you've got 2 guys in the room looking at a big TV monitor. Just quickly, can I just dive off VAR for a minute, Des? I don't know if you know, but this season I've noticed when it comes to the semi-final and the final of the Scottish Cup, why on earth have they got 2 4th officials down trackside? Because I noticed that for the Rangers Aberdeen semi-final that there was a 4th official for the Rangers side, and believe it or not, a 4th official for the Aberdeen side. I mean, surely they're getting paid good money. That they've only got to lift the board up and say number 5 is coming off to be replaced by number 28. Why does it take two guys to stand about and he's a board to hold up?
I probably getting paid for having the best seat in the house. I can only assume that that's the assistant referee if one of the linesmen happened to go down. I know they used to sit in the stand, which probably wasn't conducive because if you need to warm up with your tracksuit, etc., then it's probably better having them down there at pitch side in case they have to come on at a minute's notice, just as the fourth official would have to come on if it's the referee. So I don't know, Michael. I will find it. I'll endeavour to find that out for you, and I'll get a message across to you.
Can I also quickly just ask as well, because I don't know the answer to this. I think actually Alison might have mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, but see when VAR first came in, now obviously Des, you probably know a lot of referees, James, you probably know a lot of referees as well. When VAR came in, did referees actually want this?
No.
I don't think.
Why would you? They wouldn't have had to say in it. But why would you want that?
It's coming in. It's like your wife making your dinner. You're getting it. So they ask what you want all the time, does she? It's just sat there.
Not the way my wife cooks. She's not here, so I can say it.
No, I mean, for a referee, you effectively have diminished their power because their decision making and why they ever got involved in it to be the person that's making a game fair, to open that up to a second opinion. I don't think any referee would have said, I want that. Des mentioned earlier on, it'd be nice to know you never cost, through your mistake, you never cost a club, but at what cost does that come? Because it appears to cause more harm than good. And that's just part of the roller coaster of football, that decisions went for you and decisions went against you. Talk all the time about this, about some of the greatest moments in football are through mistakes or things not seen. Talk about did the goal cross the line at Wembley? Did Maradona touch it with his hand? You know, these famous things that all happened wouldn't exist now with VAR. You know, all these grand talking points in the history of football, they wouldn't have happened with VAR because you would have literally just had a screen review and both of them would have been chopped. So as part of the drama that's gone from football and now probably gone forever.
Well, think about
James, there's a couple of ones there where you forgot to mention Duncan Ferguson not being sent off at Ibrox. I think that might have been caught as well.
I still don't think he would have been sent off, to be fair.
Do you know what people have actually forgotten about now? What have we not had since VARs came in? And this was a massively contentious issue when it did happen at first. And it was a former Scottish referee who was in charge of the sort of programme of it. Remember the additional assistant referees behind the goals?
Yep.
That was a pre-runner to VAR, if you think about it. Now VAR's come in, there's no need for those guys behind the goals. But we're still getting things wrong as we got windows were in it. So referees have no say on it. FIFA make the laws of the game. They then pass that down to UEFA or all of the regional governing bodies. They then pass that down to the national associations, and it's stuck. You're stuck with it. You're getting it. You now need to deliver it.
See, the funniest thing is, right, see, like, let's just say, for example, this won't happen. Like, let's say, for example, right, VAR in Scottish football gets completely scrapped. You can guarantee the next week there'll be a big decision and folk will say, oh, if VAR was there, they would have sorted it out. So you're not going to win out of the way. It doesn't matter.
Absolutely. Can I answer that? Can I answer that, Graham? Because I'm conscious that Michael talked about surveys and things, and there's been a lot of surveys on VAR. Interestingly, there's just been one by Ipsos, which suggests that the fans in England all like VAR, which I'm slightly sceptical about because I've looked at it and we won't go into details, but it's 1,000 odd people. A few years ago, the football supporters in England, the Football Supporters Association did a survey, 33,000 fans, 95% against it. Interestingly, 2 years later, that number's come down to about 66%. In Scotland, the Scottish Football Supporters Association surveys have shown consistently about 85%. But the critical thing for me, and this applied to both our survey pre-VAR being introduced and a year after it, 2/3 would rather tolerate more incorrect decisions than tolerate the disruption to matches caused by VAR. And that went up between the two surveys. So that, to some extent, answers your question, Graham. The problem is the media would not let go of it. They'd be like a dog with a bone. And this comes back to the overall question about what fans can do. Just one last thing on surveys, though, I remember the SFSA also did a survey asking lower division fans, because of course they don't have VAR. And we didn't get such a big response. It was just under 400, I think, as opposed to heading to 3,000, the previous one. essentially, they all said, 85%, they said they prefer lower division matches, whether it's on the telly or in person without VAR. That tells you all you need to know. Another quick thing while I remember, this is just going off a quick aside, where you were talking, James and Des, about the end of the game and managers and players. We could learn from rugby. Rugby has a law or a rule that players and officials must not talk to the referee for 15 minutes after the game to let them cool down. I'm not sure how we could actually get that imposed, but if you could, it would take so much heat out of this stuff. And to go to the thing about what can we do about it, the Scottish Football Association does not like the Scottish Football Supporters Association because we ask awkward questions and say things they don't like. And again, on the subject of referees, I've said this to you guys in some of the shows before, I'll say it again to a bigger audience. We've got 85,000 members. We've been promoting the idea of becoming a referee to them because we know there's a shortage of referees. The SFA have said in writing they will not support us on this. We've offered to pay for some referees to do training, and they have instructed every association not to talk to us. Does that not tell you an awful lot about the state of refereeing in this country? And they do it because we want to have a debate about an independent regulator. We're not saying you have to have one, but we think there should be one. They're obviously against it. So the lack of transparency, all the things that James talked about before, that permeates every area of Scottish football. It's not to say the SFA don't do good things, but they're not prepared to get involved. Our belief is, and we've got a survey running, which will run till the summer, we should actually in Scotland just stop and just take a breath and go, let's have a proper review with the fans involved, going back to James's point, or Des's point, where you asked as a Hearts fan or as a Saints fan, do you want this stuff? The fans should have far more of a say, because the fans all said to their clubs, we don't want this. The clubs would be a bit stuck. The only way to do that is to actually get a proper panel, which is transparent. We know who's involved in it, including fans, and say, right, let's look at the whole thing. It may be we just take a pause. We say, you know what, let's get the technology for offside so it's spot on and we can afford it, and then there's no debate. It doesn't suck the joy from the game. Let's get the handball law changed so it goes back to, as Des said, just deliberate or not. Again, it just removes all the things which people hate about fans. I'm not against technology at all. I think if technology could be made to work for offside straight away, no problem. It's the hanging around and waiting and then the obfuscation around the lines that really, does our heads in as fans.
Yeah.
There is a way to do it, but it's probably not going to happen because trying to get all competing fans together on the back of a cup final where one half of them think that they were done, the other half of them think they weren't, there's your problem. But it doesn't mean it's not worthwhile trying to do.
Absolutely, Alistair. Look, what people need to realise about the SFA is that it's committees, right? So you've got the committee that looks after the national team side of things and the corporate side of it that Maxwell looks after. And then you've got the refereeing committee that does its own thing. And the two don't get involved in each other's ways. They stay out of each other's business. Yet the comments will come from Mr. Maxwell, but the refereeing committee's running what's happening with refereeing, right? So while you'll get a statement from Maxwell because he's the head of the org, he won't really be getting involved in what's happening with refereeing at all. He's just passing on a message from the refereeing committee. And that's why we said for such a long time now, after Crawford Allen announced he was leaving, this is a great opportunity to go and get experience from the continent or somewhere else in the world who has already suffered a bad experience with VAR and has shown some level of correcting it and bringing something new and fresh to the table. Or they go with option B and it's just the next guy in line. And as predicted, they just went for the next guy in line because they don't want someone from the outside coming in, making suggestions, asking why there's a committee running this thing, asking why this is still living in the dark ages and why we're not looking outwards for answers. They think that they know all. And the attitude is always, it's our ball. If you want to play with it, you do what we say. It's terrible, but that is the reality of the association running football. It's not run for fans anymore. It's run for self-preservation and for what the clubs demand for an easy life.
Absolutely.
I'm not just saying this because they're on the show, but I've listened to James and Des and Steve's podcast before, and they're the most honest and refreshing guys I think I've actually heard. Is like, obviously, Des, the next referee. I think they've been great on this podcast. It's been absolutely brilliant to talk to you. But I have to ask the question. They won't listen, so you can say what you want. But does anyone know what Willie Collum is actually going to do in this job? Because I don't have a clue.
No,
I'll
just
tell you exactly what he's going to do. I know exactly right now what he'll do. He'll do what he's told. That's what will happen. He'll do what he's told. The Self-Preservation Society, that is the committee structure within the Scottish FA, and I know James touched on it, within the sort of commercial world, the national team world, the coaching world, all of these entities within the SFA are run by committees who stand separately. And if you don't poke the bear won't poke you. It's been forever thus. Now, they went and hired a global recruitment company to find the best candidate that we could to lead up this new organisation. VAR has been an unmitigating, I wouldn't say disaster, but it's not been great since it came in. We had the opportunity to fetch far and wide to the four corners of the world to really strike up a whole new, fresh ethos. Howard Webb's been great in England. He's public facing, he's coming out, he's making comments. Guys are getting dropped, guys are getting changed. Are you telling me that we have went for a young person who's been within the SFA structure since he was 14 and was born 4 miles down the road, that we needed a company in Dubai to find that? It was
There's
always
a history.
going to be thus.
Yeah, and who has a history of controversial decision making. That's Willie Collum's been responsible for more headlines for and caused more controversy in Scottish football than probably any other referee in the last 10 years. Yeah, he's rewarded with the top job because he's the most experienced guy in there. Being the most experienced doesn't mean that you're the best or the best candidate, but that is just the next in line. He was the next in line.
What I would hope is, I hope Willie has got the fortitude and the strength of character to make challenging decisions in there, to try and change the status quo, and to have his own stamp on it. I just feel that the people above him and the people around him won't allow anyone to have the carte blanche to change it. We've seen it what happened to Stuart Reagan when he tried to change the ethos behind Scottish football. How long did he last? And he was the last person to challenge that structure. And then when Mr. Maxwell's came in, the whole allegations at the time where one committee gets to pick the chief executive and another committee gets to pick the manager. So they just left each other alone, and that's why we end up with Mr. Maxwell and Mr. McLeish. So I think this has been a status quo that the committee have been allowed to pick their own man. And as soon as that candidate was there, the job was always going to be there. But as I say, I'm really wishing well, because I want to see the standard of refereeing in Scotland progress and have our guys back operating in Europe.
We all want that, don't we?
I think there's only one word that comes to mind, guys. Dinosaurs, maybe? Don't know. There
must be an older word than that, Michael.
I would have used the word jobs for the boys. That's probably better.
It's cronyism. That's the correct term. It's cronyism. It's literally, it is jobs for the boys. It is keeping things in your level of control. You have a man in heading that who you know that you can control and influence so that you retain power. That's what it's all about. It's about retaining status and power.
James, so that comes. Just one last point, Michael. I mean, that comes back to this thing about you talked about the committees and all that kind of stuff. When we approached the SFA to ask for their support on our initiative to get more referees, we approached Crawford Allen, and he replied initially. It was when we asked the second question, saying, "Look, okay, we appreciate you can't do X, Y, and Z, but will you actually just allow us to see you're supporting us?" That was when we got the letter from Maxwell. So clearly, that was referred upwards. And our belief is that was then passed back to the referees, and the associations don't speak to these guys. Ironically, we're going out and sharing all our stuff on Facebook, and occasionally they're coming liking and saying thanks very much. So someone obviously not got the message. But to my mind, that illustrates, and you can take that into all the other areas of Scottish football, that illustrates the problem.
Just coming to the end of the show, and we could stay on for another 2 hours, guys. That was fascinating. Listen to Des Steve and James on the podcast. It's a brilliant podcast. They've actually told us to say it. Follow them on Twitter, Behind the Whistle as well. So, yeah, it's fascinating, guys. If you've missed any bits of the show, you can watch it back. It's available on YouTube, X, and Facebook as well. Des, James will have you back on again, no doubt. Alistair, Graham, thanks as always. Thanks to everybody. It's contributed tonight. And of course, we'll be back for the Euros because I don't know if I told you, Scotland's going to the Euros. We've got a preview show on the 9th of June. So, yeah, and no refs going to the Euros. What a surprise. Anyway, thanks for watching tonight, and we'll see you on the 9th of June.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.